Hello, everyone. And today I'm joined on our podcast by Bern Mendez. He's a neuroscience based dating and relationship coach who has spent over 14 years helping smart, successful women attract deep, lasting love. So, Bern specializes in uncovering the hidden patterns that are rooted in our nervous systems that cause women to keep choosing wrong partners, right? And in this episode, we'll kind of explore why women over 40 keep falling into the trap, particularly after divorce, and how we can finally break free from these unhealthy patterns and actually find that healthy, passionate relationship that you deserve. So, Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, Angela. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to connect with you today.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, hey, I work with a lot of women that are, going through separations and divorces, and a lot of them happen to be in that 40 age mark. And I like to, hope that after their work is done with me, they move on to more fulfilling relationship. And that's obviously not always the case. And Bern, you've told me that this, had a lot, the issues are deeper. So can you please talk about, how this nervous system could be helping us choose our relationship?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that take place when somebody is making decisions to choose a partner. And the thing with choosing a partner is that it's not just a cognitive experience, it's a biological and physiological experience. So, what I mean by that is we all have a blueprint, if you want to call it that. This is a metaphor, it's not necessarily something that's hardwired, but we have a blueprint of what to choose for based on what we learned growing up. So imagine that you grew up in a household where you got shouted at by your mom or your dad all the time, or where if you were to express your emotions, you were shamed for that. Or if you wanted love, maybe from one of your caregivers or both of them, it was very inconsistent. You experienced it sometimes you got the stonewall face, sometimes you got carrot, and sometimes you got a stick, you know? So when that happens, your nervous system learns to interpret all those signals that are intimacy. Basically, you start confusing that level of connection with intimacy. So what happens when you go into the real world as a grown-up and you've learned, maybe you watched Cinderella and Snow White find their princess, and then you go ahead and you learn more about what's possible, and then you watched 50 Shades of Grey, and you have all these ideas about what love and intimacy and passion are supposed to be like, but you have this wiring inside yourself that is going towards this experience that is familiar, but it's not necessarily healthy. So sometimes when you are in that mode of being and you connect with a human being who is a healthy person and it doesn't resonate because it's not your blueprint, your nervous system interprets that as boring instead of safe. So that's the classical example. If you've ever had a friend who
Yeah.
connects with bad boys, maybe she got divorced and maybe she starts connecting with guys who are really bad for her, but they're so exciting and so fun, so charismatic. What happens in situations like that is that you're going for something that feels exciting and spikes your dopamine level, which is really
Yeah.
makes you feel alive, but simultaneously is hurting you because you're not getting that reinforcement of love that you're really seeking.
Yeah, but that's kind of what mainstream dating advice is made of. Well, that's what it seems like, right? Because when you watch all of these movies and you watch, and you read the books, it almost seems like you need to get that excitement from day one. So are you saying that that's not necessarily good for us? And if you're a woman in your 40s trying to date, you shouldn't be looking for that excitement off the bat. Like, what are you saying, Ben?
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so excitement is not bad. It's a good thing. I think, especially if you've been in I mean, most likely than not, if you're getting divorced and that's not something that was like a complete surprise, sometimes it is, but if it's not a surprise, even if somebody, for example, was cheated on but their marriage already wasn't working and there was a lack of connection or passion, which sometimes happens, when you go out and connect with someone, you want to feel something that you haven't felt in the last 10, 15, 20 years sometimes. So it's very natural, and there's no looking down on anyone who wants to experience that, because that's the nature of being alive, connecting with someone who helps you feel more connected and alive and more passion. The challenge becomes when you're secretly optimizing for that above other things.
Oh,
So
I
that
like
means
that.
when
Secretly
you're
optimizing.
I connect with lots of clients, I mean, or people who come to me for work to work with me. And when we start talking about what do you want as for a partner, they'll say, "Well, I want somebody who's kind, somebody who's compassionate, somebody who has integrity." So all those are amazing qualities, but they end up going for something that is not that because they're secretly optimizing for hotness and for tall, dark, and handsome and for that experience of sparks, you know? So sparks can be a powerful thing in a relationship. So I'm not saying if you connect with someone in their sparks, run away. I am saying if you connect with someone in their sparks, it's more reason why you need to slow down to make sure that your neurobiology is not convincing you that this is the right person when all it is really a connection that has intensity. So also to answer your question, when you connect with someone and that spark is not there from the get-go, it doesn't mean it won't develop. It just means you need more time to witness and experience and have a reciprocal ladder of vulnerability where you have the possibility of more happening. So if you connect with someone and you go back to your girlfriends and say, "Hey, how was it?" I don't know.
Mhm.
If you say I don't know, but that I don't know is not also connected with this is a guy that I get a really bad vibe from, or he's a guy who's incompatible with my values. If it's just I don't know because my heart didn't explode and the angels didn't sing, and the Messiah himself didn't come with a golden, plate to say that's the one, then
Yeah.
it's important to give that person a second chance, and a third chance even, and then ask yourself the question: is this feeling of sparks growing a little bit? Is there more attraction than it was at the beginning? If you go through 30 dates with someone and you feel nothing else and you've really given it your best, then you can move on. But I found through many of my clients who ended up marrying amazing men who didn't feel those sparks at the beginning. And if they had done things the way they did them before, they would have said, that guy's, he's not the one, and then moved on. So by slowing down and having more deep connection and asking better questions and also putting more skin in the game, like I find that women who find guys attractive sometimes put these guys in pedestals unconsciously. And when you connect with someone that he's not your type, quote unquote, then it's someone's like, okay, you take it for granted a little bit. So you're not even showing up with as much expression and as much vulnerability. But if you actually have a standard for yourself when you go on dates, which I'm going to show up at my 100, not for the man, because that's how I show up, by showing up that way, the listener and the speaker have an infinite loop of affecting each other. So the way you show up, if you're more radiant, more expressive, slightly more vulnerable, that man might show up in a stronger way than he would have for somebody else because of the way you're showing up. And if you had basically given it he's not showing up with sparks, so I'm gonna metaphorically half-ass it, then what
Yeah.
happens is that connection may not happen, not because it's not possible, but because most people are doing the mid-mast, not full mast of the flag, but just mid-mast of, we're just winging it.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just wondering, like, it's kind of hard in this day of sort of the dating apps, and I
Yeah.
just find that, it's almost just a game for most people, and it's like you're swiping, I don't know, whatever, I'm not sure what direction it is, if it's left or right, but when you're just swiping through people and not picking them. So when you're doing that, I mean, I just feel like at that point you're just looking at pictures. Like, how do you, and as you said, like you want this person that's kind, you want someone that maybe romantic or not, like whatever the case may be. But
Yeah.
I feel like we're just all kind of being trained to just
Mhm.
go based on the first pictures that we see, right?
I think that there's a big challenge taking place right now where a lot of the women I work with feel disposable after being in an experience of online dating. And I'm not here to diss online dating because online dating can be a very powerful tool to get you to find the love of your life. However, the way most people use online dating, they end up feeling used more than feeling empowered. Like there's a study that was done recently where they studied people who were doing online dating and they followed them for maybe 12 weeks. By week 12, if they do online dating the traditional way, they experience the same level of burnout emotionally than ICU nurses experience just by being online.
That
So
is
that means,
interesting.
yeah. So if you're going to be doing it online, you have to make sure that you don't do it all day. You don't keep the app open all day long. That's going to hijack your nervous system. It's going to help. It's going to build that inconsistent reinforcement that creates addiction. So what you do is you maybe open up a few minutes after you do great things in the morning, not first thing, and maybe a little bit at night. So 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then that's it. and then you may even need to prime and do like take an emotional shower after you do it, dance, breathe, do something so that you don't get the feeling of that necessarily carrying over to your day. So if you do that and then you ask better questions and then you take it offline as quickly as possible. One of the challenges that happens, and I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, it's just people are not used to knowing how to take things offline. If you start connecting with someone, either you'll get very superficial, good morning, beautiful, and good night, and nothing else, or you'll get deep, long conversations where you think you're getting to know that person's soul, but you're not really. So when you get to connect with someone there, it's really important to first, when there's some level of connection, some level of compatibility, and you know the person's serious about a relationship, then you take it offline. And the next step wouldn't be like going on a date. It would be asking someone to get on a video call. And the reason why that's so important is because I imagine that the women who listen to you are incredibly intelligent and hardworking, and they don't have time to go on 30 failed dates. And even though there's nothing that can eliminate the risk of going on a bad date, there's things that can significantly reduce the risk. And one of them is, imagine you connect with someone, and when you meet with him on a video call for 5 minutes, you say, ah, this is not for me, for any variety of reasons. Maybe the picture that he showed you is 20 years difference. Maybe the vibe he gives you is really aggressive or creepy. So if that's the case, guess what happens? You don't go into an in-person date where you're in a restaurant for 2 hours silently suffering, hoping to jump out the window of the restaurant, and then an hour to get ready and get to the place, an hour. So that's 4 hours of your life you'll never get back. Versus
Yeah.
you connect with someone on a video call, it's not a super strong fit, not because it's not the explosive of the heart type of person, but because that's someone who really doesn't resonate with you at a visceral level. And then you don't have to spend that. So you can do that. Another thing that's really powerful for the world of dating apps is to have a lot of in-person connections. One of the things I teach my clients, and I actually guide them through specific sequence of places that's curated for their needs, because every person is different value-wise and every city is different. So I give them a list. Here's the 50 best places for you to put yourself in, where you're more likely to meet guys that are at your level, so to speak, and also who share similar values. Because if all you're doing is the apps, then you're at the mercy of the algorithm tyrant, the little tyrant of the algorithm, who's basically saying, here's your love life or you have no love life. So if you have that, but you're also every week you're doing things outside, you're having in-person connections in shared spaces that already filter people out based on some level of values, then you're doing what the minority of people do, and you have a stronger chance of meeting someone who's resonant with you.
Wow, that's interesting because it almost seems like the in-person meetings these days, it's almost non-existent. So it must be great because for a lot of people in their 40s, their initial dating experiences was in person, and so you're living this um, marriage after maybe several years, several decades in some cases, and now it's like okay, you have to learn this whole new world. So it's good to know that people that work with you are able to kind of get that more familiar world, I would say. So that's
Yeah, it also changes the way, I mean, because even if you don't find your guy in real life and you end up finding your guy on an app, putting yourself out there, connecting with people, flirting in person, reading the signs of someone, attuning to somebody, those are skills that you can take with you to any type of dating experience that you for someone you connect with online, any type of relationship. Like we need to make sure that because we don't have unlimited time, that the skills we build in dating can be translated to a relationship. So this initial attraction building space is something that will need to continue throughout the relationship. Otherwise you get to the we're brother and sister living together. We call each other husband and wife.
yeah, yeah. No, that's so true. But okay, there's something that I hear a lot of women talk about, and that's just saying, this idea of having partners that are emotionally unavailable. Like,
Mhm.
can you speak to this? Like, where do you start? How do you know? Now, I understand so far that we need to be a little bit deeper as individuals and not just, look for that hallmark moment where sparks are flying and as you said, the angels sing.
Yeah.
But what if you've done that and now you're meeting partners that are emotionally unavailable? Is it that we chose the wrong partners? Is it that the person's bad? Like What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I divide this up into different categories. One would be during the dating space. The other one would be if you already find yourself. I've been married to someone for the last 10 years, and I just realized this person is emotionally available. That's a different story. So let me address the dating one first, and I'll address the other one. On the dating space, I get a lot of clients who come to me for help before we start working together who say, hey, you know what? I'm attracting a lot of unavailable, emotionally available men. And my whole thing is the problem isn't attracting emotionally unavailable men. The problem is corresponding and spending energy and playing that game with someone who's emotionally available. But I'll share a little bit. I mean, like beyond that, I'll share a little bit why it's so persistent. Because when first of all, imagine that you already have this blueprint of love equals intimacy equals inconsistency. So even though you want something else, that's what you feel comfortable with. So let's say that's a problem, and that's maybe at least 50% of the population already have that, which turns out into an insecure attachment style, whether it's avoidant or whether it's anxious or whether it's a mix of both. I mean, there's at least half the population have some of that. But on top of that, you connect with someone who is giving you this thing that apps give you, which is called intermittent reinforcement. The way I explain this is, and the experiments, the way this came about is if you get in a series of mice on little cages and you have them push a little lever, and every time you do the thing, you get a little pellet of food, then that's a regular reinforcement schedule. If you press a little lever and you get a little pellet of food, and then you press it 3 more times and you get nothing, and then 1 more time and you get 1, and then 5 more times and nothing, that's an intermittent reinforcement. So rats who are on the intermittent variable schedule become addicted to pressing the lever. And when they stop feeding the rats, when no food comes out for either of the groups, the rats who learn that inconsistent keep pushing it for far longer. So what does that mean? If you connect with someone who's emotionally available, who one day says you're the most beautiful woman in the world, and you have an amazing date with him, and then he just freaks out a little bit, and then he doesn't give you anything for a week, and you're texting him and he's not responding, then that's the same thing of pressing that level and not getting it. And then when he does reach back and say, I've been so busy, I'm so sorry, I miss you so much, guess what happens? Dopamine goes into your nervous system, and the cycle of addiction repeats it. I mean, I won't bore you with all the details of what happens
No,
inside the
this is
brain.
great stuff, Vern. This is wow. Yeah, but no, please keep going.
Yeah, so when somebody has this inconsistency, this person that's emotionally unavailable, but they're craving connection, you go from dopamine level excitement, I want this person to give something to me, to withdrawals because the person has anxiety because the person not give that to you, and then you get a rise in level of cortisol and adrenaline, and then you go through a few withdrawals, the person gives you something back, dopamine fits into the nervous system again, and that's a very addictive process. That's the nature of an addictive process. So it's hard sometimes when someone is connected to a guy who's inconsistent / emotionally available, and the friends are basically looking at her saying, hey, you just have low self-esteem, and it's not low self-esteem, it's an addiction taking place in there internally, So, I mean, I'm not saying self-esteem is not part of it, but it's not the full story. So when you understand this is taking place, then you can remove a little bit of the shame of that and start connecting with human beings where when you notice that, when you know that there's that game of hot and cold, you are very likely to get addicted to it unless you are very, very cognizant of what's happening and you create more options, or you're willing to share with a person, here's my preference when I connect with someone in dating. I really appreciate consistency. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know what that is. Then stop dating that person, because you might get hooked into the wrong guy. And when you get hooked into the wrong guy, then especially if there's sex going on, when sex happens and orgasms take place during sex, there's a whole series of other neurochemicals that take place, vasopressin, oxytocin, and those create bonding with someone. So you connect with a guy who's not good for you, he's emotionally unavailable, he might even be abusive in some way, and you're having sex with this guy, you're getting really attached to a person who's not good for you. So your brain will convince you to continue going and to give him another chance. And there's other guys who are showing up and they're just boring. They're just the kind of guy he doesn't have that je ne sais quoi mystique, that women are looking for. So it's just, you get into that space, and then one day you wake up in a dark alley with no exit, eating tuna from a can or sardines, and you don't know how you got there, and you got there one day at a time through that inconsistency and just getting a little bit more on that cycle of addiction. So that I would say that's what happens a lot in the dating world when somebody already recognizes that they're with a partner, they love the person, but the emotional openness is not there. I think getting help is the best thing they could do. And there's individual help, obviously, and therapy is great for that. And there's couples help where you can see if there's a room for that person to meet you in the middle. And there's many reasons why a man in connection with a relationship with someone who's craving more intimacy doesn't express that. More likely than not, he didn't learn it. More likely than not, he learned the opposite of it, or he maybe learned as a protection mechanism to not express emotions. This whole idea that men are not emotional is BS. It's been proven scientifically again and again that men are just as emotional as women. They may not have the capacity to express it. Culturally or societally, we're not trained to do that, but men are very emotional beings. When there's cultures that are fathers are their nurturers, for example, and it's not because they have a different biology, it's just they have a different culture. So when you understand that there's a possibility for more, then you don't try to reinvent the wheel by just forcing your guy into being more expressive. You share vulnerably that you're hurting and that you'd really, really, really like to get some help, not because there's something wrong, but because you want more. And that's the key area, is not whether your guy is emotionally available or not, if you're already in the middle of a relationship, but
Yeah.
is he willing to get help? Because if he's not emotionally available, he's not willing to get help, then you're basically 1 in a million chances for that thing. It's like winning the lottery. I mean, you might win it, but more likely than not, you won't.
Yes. No, this is such great stuff. And hearing you describe how, the brain functions within relationships, it's just my mind's going all over. And it's honestly making me a little bit, and I'm just happy to hear this. I mean, you live and you learn, right? And I think
Mhm.
maybe now I would be a little bit more understanding and more compassionate. Because yes, you see from the point of view of, yeah, why don't you just have a better self-esteem? Or, if you're talking to a friend, or why can't you
Yeah,
be stronger? Like it's almost a sign of weakness is the way I would ordinarily look at it. And now to
yeah,
understand, like, wow, over time, this person has built these connections in their minds, and they're, you know, could be from childhood, whatever the case may
mhm,
be, and now they're seeing this pattern in their relationship, and it's just kind of what they're used to. So they just really need to get the work, and not just the work in terms of talking it out, but just even working with someone like you that's really letting them understand what they can do about it. Like I think it's pretty powerful stuff. So this is, yeah,
yeah. There's
great.
something else taking place in that type of connection, and maybe many of your clients experience it. There's something called the sunk cost fallacy, which is a cognitive bias that was discovered many, many years ago, which basically, and they've tested this in multiple environments, and they've actually validated it neurobiologically as well. So it's not just a theory, it actually is the way human beings make decisions, where when you invest heavily in something, even when you recognize is not the good investment, you continue doing it because you want to remain consistent with what you've done. Because your brain says, well, I've invested so much, I don't want to lose, so I continue investing. So for example, somebody recognizes my marriage is not working, they go to therapy, they go to counseling, it's not working. 10 years later, they're still working on it. Sometimes it's this. They've invested so much, and the more you invest, the more you want to continue investing, even if it's not good for you. So there's like at least 3 different things that take place that make this really challenging. So anyone who hasn't been in an abusive relationship or a draining relationship or toxic, it's kind of easy from the outside to say, well, just leave the man. But it's so much harder inside. It's so much harder because there's so many factors at play, from your identity to the way you're wired, literally, to the way you bond with someone. So that's why it's really important when you find a solution, to find a solution that addresses not just the cognitive thought process of, I'm going to find someone better. You can say that, but your brain is going to say, well, how? But also to do the things to really settle your nervous system again, to reset it, and to make sure that you are from a cognitive place, but also from a nervous system place regulated, so that you can start making better decisions, and that when the triggers show up again, because that if you haven't worked on those triggers, then you go out and you think that it's disappeared because you haven't experienced it in years. You put yourself in dating again, and you experience either that avoidance or that anxious attachment from day one. So when that happens, it's really important to do something that disrupts basically the way things are happening inside of you, so you don't repeat the same pattern again and again. You're not, I mean, an attachment style is not an indictment for life. It's just the way things are now. You can change that. It just requires work.
I love that. It's not an indictment of life.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like something here, like, and I think I'm starting to get an idea, but I still want to hear your thoughts on people that think it's okay to have fighting and drama in relationships. It just almost seems like every relationship after relationship, it's almost I actually know people that think that if that fighting isn't going on, if that breakup and makeup and all of that isn't happening, that it's not a real relationship and it's part of the
Yeah.
process. And, and that's, you have to work on it. And I don't deny that relationships take work and need
Yeah.
work, but I don't know if I'm on board with this whole like fighting and it's just very
Yeah.
exciting for some people, but personally, I don't know if I'm on board for that, but I want to hear your perspective on that because I get into this argument a lot with people, with friends.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Relationships being work is like waking up, taking a shower, brushing your teeth. That's work. Pulling your teeth out, that is extra work, you know? So relationships are the kind of work that requires consistency and requires sometimes you're tired and you still brush your teeth. You're tired and you still go out and exercise because it's good for you. That's the kind of work that it is. But it's not the kind of work where it's 3 a.m. and you're debating basically for 4 hours the pains of life and you wake up and you continue. That's not the type of work that relationships should be. The
Love it.
problem in that is whether one person or both people learned that and they haven't transcended their trauma. That's really what it is. It's trauma that's not worked on, that misinterprets that level of connection with someone with love. Like if they really care about me, they'll be aggressive. If they really care about me, then they'll say things just like they are. You can say things like they are and be kind instead of being dickish about it, you know? So I think that there's something to be said about what you learned and also something to be said about how you are as a couple co-regulating with each other. Because when someone is dysregulated and they're starting a pissing contest, so to speak, there's someone who talks about it this way. There's people who have the way they are wired need this type of fight. There's a few types of ADHD, for example, where that needs something really strong. And I'm not saying that every type of ADHD, because there's multiple types, or that if you have ADHD, this is you, but some people need this type of more angry or strong energy to get their brains going. And if you have a partner who has that type of makeup and they need that type of like little argument to get their brains going in the morning, for example. If you're someone who doesn't resonate with that, that's going to be a really challenging thing for you. If you don't understand it, then you're going to get into this back and forth and then you're going to escalate, right? Because you're not just reacting to that person, you're reacting to their interpretation of that person. And then now that it's like the example I'd like to give is the most vivid example is if you've ever been on a concert and there's a microphone that is close to a speaker and the microphone interacts with the speaker, there's a horrible noise and the horrible noise interacts with the microphone and the microphone interacts. So it's just a horrible loop, right? So what happens when somebody wants to pick a fight with you unconsciously? They're not doing because they're mean. They're just, that's what they need to get going. And they pick a fight with you. And instead of taking a little time out, you get triggered and then you react in such a way that you start this little fight. Now your trigger triggers them even more and they trigger. So it's like, whenever people find themselves in that situation, the best thing they can do is the human being who is the most cognizant and most adult in the room needs to call a timeout. And what does that mean? It's not just I leave and you shut the door. No, you say, right now, I'm not feeling like myself. I can't be my best self and you and I deserve that. So I'm going to take 10 minutes out to regulate and come back. You're not asking for permission. You're not saying it's you. Your anger is making me like, I am taking this upon myself. It's my responsibility. I'm doing. So what happens? First of all, you have a time limit. So it's not just abandoning the person. If that person has sexual attachment, they won't freak out about it. You're also going out of the room. You're breathing deeply. You do something to regulate and you can maybe do 4, inhale to the count of 4, hold for 7 seconds, exhale to the count of 8. You do a few of those. Your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of fight or flight, will be triggered. Your heart rate will lower. When you come back, there's a different version of you. Your amygdala, which is the smoke alarm in your nervous system, is not the one that's taking hold. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part that thinks and plans and can be more cognizant, is the one that's taking over. When this part of the brain takes over, you're in fight or flight. It's the oldest part of the brain, and it's the part that's helping you survive. So your brain is reacting as if you were on a death threat for real. A tiger came into the room and you have to fight for your life. That's what happens when two people are having a pissing contest like that. So one of them has to be smart enough and resourced enough to simmer down the energy. Both people can come back to this part of the brain and then continue. Now, if you continue and the same thing happens a few times, then you call a bigger timeout. Maybe you take 2 or 3 hours to not talk about that and then come back and talk. If that happens again, that's a good sign that you need a third party intermediary to help you reach an agreement. And that would be a couple counseling of a good kind, because there's good and bad, someone who can help you understand each other and can help both of you see the things you're not seeing.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think even the first step in hearing your words and just this acknowledgement that it's not normal, it's not every relationship. It's
No.
just, because people that are in this pattern seem to think it's normal and it's everybody's doing it. And I don't know. At some point, no one's ever really said to me that they would be bored if they weren't fighting, but I almost sense that that would be the case.
Sometimes some people just need that, and that's not the only reason why people fight. There's other reasons, but I think that that's the kind of thing that if you don't address it head on, that becomes the norm, and then both human beings are just on the verge of exploding with each other. And the smallest thing, that's the whole toothpaste argument. It's not the toothpaste, is 50 times that they're not seeing each other, not acknowledging each other, and that builds resentment. So learning, but here's the cool thing: couples who learn skills of repairing interactions, and it's not something that takes ages. It can take a few hours. You can learn skills that can help you for the rest of your life, have a much stronger chance of making it. The problem is most people don't do that proactively. They only do it when they're at the brink of divorce, and it's an emergency and they have to learn it. And sometimes that's the way we learn things, but it's really powerful for women who are listening to you right now, who went through divorce and who don't want to go through a same guy, different face type of experience, to recognize what their blind spots are and how to do this differently, from vetting the person differently to when you get triggered, and you will, reacting differently and settling down your nervous system.
Oh, amazing. Now, but I want you to talk about how people can work with you because you've it's just such amazing stuff that you've given. And I know you could go on and on about this. And I just no, it's just great. And I think people you've given a lot of tools already to kind of, takeaways that we could all start using like right now. And just if someone needs to work with you, because for a lot of us it's way deeper than that, right? Like we really need someone to hold us accountable, someone to understand who we are, just, help us do that much needed work. How can people work with you?
Thank you. Well, I mean, the biggest thing with doing this work is you get a chance to learn things that instead of doing trial and error for 8 years, you can. I mean, the goal is to help you meet the person in months, not years. But first identifying what's within you to change. If somebody wants to work with me or even explore the possibility of working with me, you can go to my website, which is bernmendez.com. That's BERN mendz.com. And there's a couple of things there. There's a quiz you can take that is going to show you your blind spots, in terms of attraction. And also there's another link there. If you want to connect with me, you can schedule a call and we can figure out if we're a good fit to work together.
Oh, amazing. Yes. And I will have that information in the description as well so people can easily click on that. Thank you so much, Bern, for your time. I appreciate you being here and for just sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
inviting me. Thank you so much. And also one more thing I forgot to say, there's also a YouTube channel that's linked to my website that has hundreds of free videos. So anyone who wants to just learn for free, there's also videos there you can learn from.
Fantastic. We will also include that in the
Thanks.
description so it's easy for people to go and kind of start their learning process on their own while they wait to get started with working with you. So thanks again, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Angela.
you. Thanks.